Lightfall gave us Strand, a brand new type of subclass that involves using green energy to grapple across levels and hogtie enemies. To fine-tune your Strand subclass, there are 14 different Strand Fragments, and today we're going to tell you which of these are worth using and which of them belong in the trash. I'm Jamie Latour, and here is every Strand Fragment ranked from worst to best in Destiny 2 Lightfall. Before we begin, if you're still trying to earn enough Strand meditations to unlock all of these fragments, the best way that I found was just to run the terminal overload activity on Nia Muna over and over again, while also doing patrols at the same time. It's a bit of a repetitive process, but if you keep doing that, you should eventually have all of the Strand meditations you need to unlock all of the Strand subclass parts. Alright, now let's look at these fragments. At the bottom of the list, we have the Thread of Wisdom. When equipped, this fragment creates orbs of power when a suspended target is killed with a precision final blow. Considering that there are tons of other ways to create orbs of power, Thread of Wisdom doesn't really have that much use, especially since there's no additional stat bonus and it has a cooldown of 8 seconds. So yeah, you could skip this fragment. Number 13 is the Thread of Transmutation. While you have Woven Mail activated, weapon final blows create a tangle, and you get plus 10 strength from having this fragment equipped. This one sounds good, and a plus 10 boost to strength is always nice, but it actually doesn't create as many tangles as you would want it to. In fact, it only creates one every 12 seconds. It's not terrible, and it can perhaps be useful if you're looking to buff up your strength for PvP, but otherwise, you can do without this fragment. At the number 12 spot is Thread of Finality. Finisher final blows create threadlings, and you get plus 10 to your recovery with this fragment equipped. The description on this one is a bit deceiving, as it states that it creates threadlings, as in multiple threadlings, when in reality it only spawns one threadling, so this is just blatant false advertising. It's also borderline useless in PvP since you can't finish other guardians, so its only use there is the boost to recovery, which is nice, but not enough to make it worth using over other fragments. So that makes this fragment another one you can skip, unless you really need an additional threadling. At number 11 is Thread of Fury. Damaging targets with a tangle grants you melee energy, and you get a negative 10 strength debuff with this fragment equipped. What this means is that you get roughly 10% of your melee energy back when you hit an enemy with a tangle, and that amount can increase depending upon how many enemies are hit with that tangle. However, this only counts the times that you throw a tangle at enemies, so detonating tangles with your weapons won't give you back any melee energy. So if your build focuses on blowing tangles up, this fragment isn't going to be all it's cracked up to be. Couple that with the negative 10 hit to your strength, and there are likely better fragments you could put into a slot. At number 10, we have Thread of Isolation. Rapid-fire precision hits will emit a severing blast from the target. So if you connect with some fast precision hits on an enemy, they'll release strand energy and their damage output will decrease for a few seconds. The best situation to use this fragment is when you're facing off against a boss in some endgame activities and you're looking to reduce their damage for a bit. So not a bad choice for raids and Grandmaster Nightfalls, but there are other fragments that outshine this one, so it can feel like a bit of a waste of a fragment slot. At number 9, we have the Thread of Rebirth. When you defeat roughly 2 or 3 enemies with a strand-powered weapon, it will spawn a threadling that will seek out enemies and blow them up. Not a bad fragment. It will increase the usefulness of your strand weapons in both PvE and PvP activities, and it's a particularly good fit for warlocks, but for hunters and titans, there may be fragments that I'm about to mention that would make for a better fit. At number 8, we have the Thread of Evolution. This one increases the potency of threadlings by allowing them to travel faster and further and deal about 25% more damage. If you're running a build that focuses on using threadlings, then this is a fragment that you should absolutely have equipped. It's also another good fragment for Brood Weaver Warlocks. However, if you're not building around having threadlings do most of your dirty work, then perhaps you should skip this one. At number 7 is the Thread of Binding. this one's pretty good. When you kill a target with your super, their corpse will send out a wave of strand energy that will suspend any enemies caught in the blast radius. What makes it even better is that it has no cooldown, the effect lasts for 8 seconds, and you get a plus 10 resilience boost when you have this fragment equipped. Not a great fragment for Broodweaver Warlocks, but it can be very good for Threadrunner Hunters and Berserker Titans. The Silk Strike and Blade Fury supers can stunlock hordes of enemies when you use this fragment, and this includes tougher champion enemies as well. Plus, that resilience boost is always nice in PvP. Still not one of the best fragments per se, but if you have a spare slot and this works with your build, it's not a bad choice. At number 6 is the Thread of Propagation. Upon landing a final blow on an enemy with your melee ability, your strand weapons will gain unraveling shots, which will send projectiles flying everywhere. If you're planning on using strand weapons, this could be a very effective fragment to use in PvE activities that feature crowds of enemies. And using your grapple melee does count as a melee ability kill, so depending on your build, you could just keep replenishing your unraveling shots over and over again with this fragment. Alright, top 5 now, and at number 5 is the Thread of Continuity. This one increases the duration of your Suspend, Unravel, and Sever effects by 50%, and it will give you a plus 10 strength buff when it's equipped. Much like the last fragment, this one can be really effective when dealing with dense crowds of enemies, or for whittling away the health of stronger enemies. Along with that strength buff, this is a solid choice for most Strand builds. Our 4th favorite Strand fragment is the Thread of Ascent, which is quite possibly the best fragment for Threadrunner Hunters. When using your grenade ability, you gain a buff for 15 seconds that increases your airborne effectiveness, handling, and your reload speed, which isn't even mentioned in the fragment description, so that's a nice little secret buff there. Using your grenade ability also instantly reloads your weapon, and you get a nice 10% boost to your mobility when this fragment is equipped. With the right kind of build, you can use this fragment to get around having to reload your gun, which is always the worst part of any shooter. The reason why this is so good for hunters in particular is because of their ability to create grappling points with Widow's Silk. Simply latch on to that grappling point, and from there you get a nice little gameplay cycle where you shoot your gun, and then you can keep shooting without that pesky reloading period. Go to hell, reloading animation. Number 3 is the Thread of Mind. When you defeat a suspended target, you'll gain roughly 10% of your class ability energy back. Now, that might not sound that great until you take each class's strand aspects into account. This fragment is really for Threadrunner Hunters and Berserker Titans, as both can use their class ability to suspend enemies. So, if you spec out your strand build correctly, you can suspend enemies far more often. Broodweaving Warlocks can still get some use out of this fragment, as killing suspended targets will give them more chances to use their Rift ability. So if you like suspending people, this is pretty good. Our number 2 choice for Strand Fragments is the Thread of Warding. You want damage resistance? This is how you get some good damage resistance. By picking up an Orb of Power, you get Woven Mail, which grants you a delightful 60% damage resistance buff in PvE activities, and a 25% damage resistance buff in PvP activities. With proper build crafting, you should be able to generate plenty of Orbs of Power, which can potentially give you near infinite Woven Mail. Now, you do get a negative 10 debuff to your resilience by equipping this fragment, but even with that, this is a must-have fragment in almost any Strand build. And our choice for the best Strand fragment is the Thread of Generation, which could quite possibly be one of the absolute best fragments for any subclass in Destiny history. What does it do? It generates grenade energy whenever you deal any kind of damage. It doesn't matter if it comes from a weapon or an ability. Hit an enemy and you get some grenade energy back. This is especially great if you have a weapon that can clear a bunch of rank-and-file enemies in one fell swoop. Just blast a crowd with something like a machine gun and watch that grenade energy meter fill right back up. This could let you grapple as much as you want or just throw a whole bunch of shackle grenades. Depending on what you're looking to do with your Strand powers, this fragment can be the cornerstone of just about any Strand build. And there you go, all 14 of the Strand Fragments ranked. And while we clearly have our favorites, most of these fragments can be used to create an effective Strand build. So hopefully this list gave you some ideas on how to use your brand new silly string powers. For more gaming news and guides, check out thegamer.com. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.